I'm Luke Hindmarsh.
And I'm Damien Humphreys
We are.
in Deep Crit.
This is a bonus deep crit session today because we've finished our rundown of the Bard subclasses, and we thought, why not have a look at some spells? So what we're going to do is give you a breakdown of our picks, our crits, and our misses for the first 5 levels, and then our crits for levels 6 through 9, and see what you think. So I'm going to kick off. In fact, we're actually going to start with cantrips because that would be a sensible place to start. I'll kick off by saying the cantrip that I would take as a bard is Friends, which I like to think of as the Jedi mind trick. And the one I would probably avoid like the plague is True Strike. Damien, what do you think of that one?
I like your choices. I've chosen 2 different cantrips. I can't really disagree massively with your choices. For me, I've taken the one I would always take is Vicious Mockery. I love it thematically, and a bit of psychic damage and disadvantage on the next attack is quite handy. And the one that I would never bother taking is Blade Ward.
Yes. I would have chosen Blade Ward instead of True Strike, except you said you chosen Blade Ward first. so yes, I don't disagree with those at all. Vicious Mockery is awesome, and Blade Ward is rubbish. Or is it? First level.
First level. So first level I have my must-have, my always take as a bard is Dissonant Whispers. Again, 3d6 psychic damage, has a few other things as well to it. And then the one that I've chosen that I wouldn't. It's not that I wouldn't never take it, but I wouldn't probably use one of my precious number of known spells on it as a bard.
Yeah.
It's Command. I just don't think. This might be controversial. A lot of people like Command. I just don't think it's worth the space or the slot.
I love Command. It isn't my first level must pick, but I do love Command, and we've talked about this before when I've taken Command, and I think it is. There are so many limitations to it potentially. I think it's maybe that my attraction to it is its thematic element. I just feel, yeah, it's great. I like being able to make my enemies grovel if they fail their saving throw. But what my must-have pick is a synergy with my cantrip choice, and that first level spell is therefore Disguise Self, because I just love the shenanigans that lets you get up to. Skullduggery, the deceit, the trickery, the setting up of situations, and it's very difficult for me to play a character that's a face character without wanting the option to have a little bit of the trickery alongside things. It's a great deal of fun. What I wouldn't take at first level is Illusory Script. I'm not really sure. Okay, there might be some times. So what we're not saying these are rubbish spells. We'd never ever take them ever. What we're saying is we're probably overlooking these for a reason, because they're so specific to certain circumstances that they're not going to be useful very often. And this spell for me is just I can imagine situations where it'd be useful, and they don't occur very often in my experience. So if you've had a different experience, let us know, but that's not my choice. I will move on to second level, where for me, now we're talking about some damage, and I happen to like Shatter. It also plays into this idea of being like the bard who's singing and can hit that high note that breaks the glass. I love that idea. I am the soprano, the high C, and it's not bad. It's 3d8 thunder damage on a failed save, a 10-foot radius sphere, range of 60 feet, and it's not exactly got any expensive components. It scales as well, so it's not bad. What I probably wouldn't take is Magic Mouth, although I really like Magic Mouth. I just feel it's not hugely useful, but that's me.
I've chosen a different spells. I agree with you, Magic Mouth. Magic Mouth's more of a DM spell, I think, than it is a player spell.
Yeah.
So the two I have chosen at second level is invisibility is a must-have. It's just great utility. You know, it's yeah. There's don't need to say anything else about invisibility. It's invisibility. And the one that I probably wouldn't pick, I certainly haven't picked ever, and I've played a couple of bards so far, is locate animals or plants. Again, in that one situation, it might be useful. It's not worth taking up a known spell or using a spell slot on. Find a ranger or buy a scroll.
Someone in the party's probably going to have proficiency in survival if it's the kind of campaign where that's necessary. I agree. It's anyway.
So that then brings us on to our third level spells. So I have chosen as my must-have third level spell, and I mean for me this is a must-have. This hypnotic pattern. I just love it. Again, I think it's very thematic for a bard, but it's also for battlefield control at third level. I don't think you get many better choices than this. And yeah, I love it as a spell. It's saved the party a few times. And the one I wouldn't choose, and this again might be a controversial choice, is Mass Healing Word. I might take it if there's no cleric or paladin in the party, but that would be the only time I would bother taking it. Not paladin, sorry, paladins don't get it. There's no cleric in the party, I probably wouldn't take it. I probably would take it, but otherwise I just don't think it's good enough to warrant the slot. Other people may disagree. I know Luke does.
Yeah, well, I do. Although it's because I've got a different, slightly different approach to what healing's about. I don't think we're a million miles away from each other in terms of the way we use certain tactics. For me, healing. So my main interest in a healing spell is using it when party members are down. And for me, this is one of those situations where, say, like you have the cleric down, you have the fighters down, and you can just save the day. So I just don't believe the idea of using healing in the war of damage versus healing attrition. That's just the wrong way of looking at it. This is a low-level spell, so you're going to feel comfortable with spending it. And for that, you get to put up back onto at least one hit point, and it's going to be more than one hit point, several members of the party. So this can make the difference between TPK and living to fight another day. And that, for that reason, I disagree with you on that. But it isn't my number one choice.
Quick counter argument.
Go on.
Is its third level.
Yeah.
You could take aid at second level and have the same effect because you give 3 people 5 hit points, which will bring them back up from nothing. And it's only a second level spell slot.
That's a fair point. And aid is awesome. It depends on the size of your party. It's yeah. All right. It's a well thought out counter argument. I have to give it that. My choice for what I would absolutely take, however, is Leomund's tiny hut. I'm not sure I need to explain this particularly, but it depends. Of course, it's going to depend on the kind of campaign you're playing. But the idea of having that 8 hours is pretty much guaranteed safety for a long rest. It's nice. That's just nice. This is the kind of thing you take in the Tomb of Horrors, sorry. Maybe even in the Tomb of Annihilation. So that's my must-have. What I wouldn't bother with is, and funnily enough, because it's quite similar, catnap, which I can see that it's potentially useful. You can take a short rest in 10 minutes. So it might be useful for giving those fighters back their abilities. It really depends. Warlocks, they're back their spell slots perhaps. So it really depends. It was a difficult choice. It's just the one I don't think is. I think it's for me, it's the weakest, least useful spell at that level. But it could be worth taking. 4th level. Interestingly, you went for invisibility earlier on. This is where I go for invisibility because I go for greater invisibility. And the option to give a creature, even doesn't have to be a character, but probably, let's face it, it's going to be one of your party members, a minute's worth of invisibility. So they're getting advantage more likely than not, and having anyone attacking them having disadvantage more likely than not is fantastic. And it's also really useful for setting up, the first strike scenario. It's a good combination. Okay, it's only a minute long, but hey, I think it's really powerful personally. What I wouldn't bother with is locate creature, because again, all right, there are times when it could be useful, but set against the other spell options, for me it's the most. Sorry, it's the least useful. It's the most underwhelming. I can say things around that way. What about you, Damien?
Yeah, I've got a couple of different choices. I think it's worth saying that once you start getting to 4th level and beyond, it becomes hard to pick spells that are definitely not takes. You're starting to get into the realm where there's good spells on every level, and it becomes possibly a bit more difficult to choose the ones that I wouldn't bother taking. But my go-to must-have for 4th level is Polymorph. It's a great spell. Obviously, there are some DM dependencies on Polymorph, but I've used it many times to various different effects. I think it's a great must-have spell at 4th level. And the one that I wouldn't necessarily go to is Compulsion. I just find there's a bit too many kind of caveats to it, and if it wasn't for the fact that the creature could take its action before it has to move, then it would be a better spell.
Yeah.
But the way it is, I just don't think it's worth the slot.
I seem to always argue with you. My apologies. I like Compulsion because of the ability to force. So it lets you make a creature retreat from combat, triggering an opportunity attack. Okay, you can't make them run into a lava pit or whatever.
It has to be horizontal to you, so you'll make them go sideways, unless you turn sideways. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're making them move. You're making them move and getting opportunity attacks.
Yeah.
Which, might be not very useful. But if you've got a combat front line that's very going to be toe to toe with a creature, and you're fighting one big foozle, whatever it is, that sails its save, and you're getting compulsion and it's having to move away, and you make it move away and it triggers the opportunity attack, you're really maximising the rest of the party's action economy. And so to that extent, I agree it's situational and very tactical, but
I don't think it's worth the 4th level.
Yeah, you might be right.
There's arguments both ways.
This
is what I mean about 4th level and beyond. You're getting to the point where it's actually quite hard to choose.
It is.
Rubbish spells. There's no real.
No, none of these are
couple,
rubbish.
But there's not. None of them are rubbish. Well, I don't know. That brings us on to the 5th level. Brings us on to the 5th level choices. And my go-to must-have for 5th level is the absolutely wonderful animate objects. It's a great spell. You talked about action economy. To have a sudden boost of action economy on your side. And the way I use this is I don't create medium or large or huge objects. I throw 10 caltrops or 10 copper pieces in the air and animate those and have them as tiny objects, doing, a little bit but consistent damage and just being in there and harassing the foes. I think it's a great spell. And the one that I wouldn't choose, and this is possibly my choice of the only rubbish spell from 5th level and above, is skill empowerment.
Yeah.
Whoopie-doo. You give somebody expertise on something they're already proficient in by the time you get 5th level spells. Yeah.
I agree with you on that one very strongly. I, however, in an attempt to be edgy, and I'm going to start with what I wouldn't take. In an attempt to be edgy, I am fully admitting this. What I wouldn't take is Raised Dead. And there's a reason why I'd never take Raised Dead. There's a couple of reasons, let's face it. Number one is the 500 gold piece is diamond, and just none of the other player characters' lives are ever worth that to me. No, seriously. For the amount of money it's costing you, you've got 10 days to get to a priest, and maybe if you're willing to throw away 500 gold pieces, maybe you're willing to throw away 750. And it depends on the availability of raised dead, generally. But the other side of it is, most of the time we tend to play with sort of permadeath, and I really like permadeath because it makes me really value my characters, and when they die, I remember them and regret their deaths. Whereas if they come back to life, it sort of costs me something. So that's a personal philosophy point rather than it's a useless spell. It obviously isn't a useless spell. This is obviously going to be subjective. And frankly, I had looked at skill empowerment, but he got there first.
And I agree with you with raised dead. I don't think there's any need for a bard to take raised dead.
No, probably not.
You know, if you don't have a cleric, go find one.
Well, I mean,
10 days.
You're a bard, and you've probably got many abilities that would allow you to persuade the nearest cleric to do it for free out of love of you. So, I just don't think it's necessary. What I would almost always take, I should think, would be synaptic static, because I love me a little bit of that psychic damage. 20-foot radius sphere, an intelligence saving throw. You take half damage if you are successful, but if you do fail, not only have you taken the psychic damage, for a minute you've got to roll a subtracted d6 from attack rolls, ability checks, constitution saving throws to maintain concentration. Okay, they get to keep on making an intelligence saving throw at the end of each of their turn, but still it's pretty effective. It's got a nice range, 120 feet. I just like this spell.
Yeah,
I just like it. Now we're moving on to the ones where it's just too difficult to find a spell we wouldn't want to take. I want all of them, all the spells. But at 6th level, what I would pretty much always take, guaranteed, without looking at the others, is Mass Suggestion, because I just love the... Do I need to explain it? You've probably gathered by now that if I'm a bard, this is what I'm wanting to do, because there'll be times where the dice rolls aren't going to go in your favour with, persuasion. Mass Suggestion just gets you around that. It's just nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 6th level is really hard to find. There's no spells that would be a waste to take. Mass Suggestion is certainly very on brand for the bard. The one I've chosen at 6th level would be True Seeing.
Yeah.
It has a small GP cost, which is consumed by the spell, so bear that in mind. If you're using a focus, you still need to pay that cost. It's 25 gold pieces. You can pick up in any of your friendly spellcasters, apothecaries, I'm sure. It lasts for an hour, and you can see everything. Everything. You can see into the astral plane. See all things as they really are. Really good spell.
It's the kind of spell that once it's saved your bacon, which I've been in a situation where True Seeing made all the difference. I entirely understand why you've gone for that.
And then up to 7th level, we're getting into you don't get many spell slots, and you don't get, so it's worth bearing in mind what you're choosing, I guess, but all of them are very good. But I've chosen as my go-to for 7th level as Force Cage, which again does have a material component cost of 1,500 gold pieces worth of ruby dust. That's not consumed by the spell though, so it's buy that once and you've got it. Is it as good as Wall of Force? Not quite, but it's the next step down, and it specifically states it can't be dispelled by magic. If you've got a tricky battle, then either stick yourself in that box, keep yourself nice and safe, or stick the big bad in that box until you've dealt with all of his minions.
It's a great spell, and it was quite tricky to not to just say what he says, but in the interests of trying to be different, I've gone with Prismatic Spray because I just love it. I think it's hilarious. I love the random element to it. It's pretty powerful. Let's face it, very powerful, potentially, and it just so often fits my view of the kind of spells that bards should be throwing around. I like it. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
And that that's not a detailed enough explanation, look at what it lets you do. It's cool. The only problem with it is dexterity saving throws. You have to choose your targets a little bit.
Yeah.
On to 8th level spells. And for me, it's Feeble Mind. Partly because it's a role-playing decision and it fits with being a bard. Partly just because of what it does. So you're doing some psychic damage. And it's an intelligence saving throw again. And on a failed save, the creature's intelligence and charisma become 1. This is all at a range of 150 feet, so can create chaos from a distance. The creature can still identify friends, etc., follow them, protect them, blah blah blah. But at the end of every 30 days, the creature gets to repeat its saving throw. So it lasts quite a long time potentially.
Yes.
If it succeeds on a saving throw, the spell ends. It can be restored by ended by Greater Restoration, Heal, or Wish. But during that time, creature can't cast spells, activate magic items, understand languages, communicate in any intelligible way.
You've turned them into a barbarian.
Yeah, barbarians do have a natural immunity to this spell, or at least no one notices any flipping difference. But yes, I mean it's great. I'm going to preempt because I know the reason why you've taken the spell you've taken at this level, and my counter to it is yes, and you could that. But imagine feeble-minding exactly the creature that we've talked about. What you would use your spell choice on. Imagine you managed to pull off the feeble mind instead. How hilarious that would be. Anyway,
Indeed.
Over to you.
So the spell I've chosen, and this is interesting because you chose earlier on some of those more bardic branded mass suggestion, friends, those kind of manipulating or improving the role playing side of things.
Yeah.
I've chosen at 8th level glibness, sorry. Which is, and actually maybe if I was College of Eloquence, I may not take this spell. There's a caveat to that, because College of Eloquence at 3rd level get an ability that is close to this anyway.
Yeah.
But you can replace the roll on any charisma check with a 15. And by the time you're getting 8th level spells, you're looking at, especially if you've got expertise in persuasion or deception, you're looking at a plus 15 with your wisdom modifier anyway. So essentially you're looking at a minimum of a 30. You can roll anywhere between 30 and 35 on those checks. Absolutely brilliant for, if the dragon wakes up when you're in the middle of his dead and he's trying to get something out of his hoard, then you have that moment where you can role play something. And okay, I'm not the kind of DM that's going to let the player get away with seducing the dragon and getting to take all of the hoard. But maybe that moment where you can buy time for the rest of the party by getting the dragon to not kill you immediately, be amusing enough,
Yes.
or talk your way out of a situation or into a situation. And I think being the bard and the face of the party, this really plays into that. And you cast it on yourself, so nothing gets a saving throw against it. Feeble Mind's a great spell.
Yeah, but
if you try and feeble mind a dragon, they're getting an intelligence saving throw.
Yeah.
Which they are proficient in with a high intelligence. So your chances of pulling it off, I guess it's 50-50. It's you can argue both of them.
I mean,
I just love this for the used car salesman, the water off a duck's back. Absolute
one day I'm going to have an ancient dragon and you're going to use this ability on them, and then it'll be like, oh, you're my new pet, you amuse me, you really amuse me, you can be my jester, stay forever.
Yeah. That's fine.
But I get you mentioned College of Eloquence, Bard, and it's interesting. You ought to see the video we did on Tasha's class options for subclasses for the Bard. But yeah, it's similar to that ability, but this is like a more powerful version of it that takes an 8th level spell slot. But still, it's awesome. Interestingly, the College of Eloquence, if you are a College of Eloquence subclass Bard, You are not going to, which is actually shouldn't be called a subclass. It's more like a superclass. Um,
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't. I mean, maybe you wouldn't take this, but then you've also got the ability to affect saving throws by using sort of that bardic inspiration against as a bonus action against
Yeah.
the ancient red dragon. So its chances of passing its intelligence
yeah.
saving throw are slightly lower. But I mean, this is 8th level. There isn't an 8th level. If you'd have said any 8th level spell, I'd have been like, yeah, that's cool. And
Yeah,
glibness
that's
is
cool.
awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. Which brings us on to a 9th level. So, you're only ever going to get one 9th level spell slot unless you've got some wonderful magic item that gives you some more. You'd have to have a very nice DM. So, there's lots of good choices, but choose wisely, I guess, because you're only ever going to get to cast one of these a day. And the one that I have chosen for my 9th level spell is Prismatic Wall. This is a wonderful spell, and there's certain synergies with it. It's one of the wall spells that doesn't need to be anchored to a particular surface, so it could be cast horizontally above a whole group of enemies. If you've then got somebody who can throw in an anti-gravity spell, you've got a whole load of people going through a wall, going through the prismatic wall and taking the effect, or having to make the saving throw or take the effect of every layer of the wall. If you're running away or you need an escape, you can put that prismatic wall across the section, and they're going to have to spend a long time getting through that wall before they can even get to you. I just love prismatic wall as a spell.
It is awesome, and very difficult for me to disagree with for 9th level. So that's where we're going to end this video. no, but this being Bards, I had to go for a slightly different one. I've chosen Foresight because I love the idea of every single day using that hummingbird feather, casting time of a minute, and then touching one of the characters who is likely to really make good use of it, and giving them effectively advantage on attack rolls, abilities checks, and saving throws, and other creatures having disadvantage on attack rolls against them for the duration of 8 hours.
Yeah. Initiative, always worth reminding, initiative is an ability check, so advantage on initiative.
Yeah, I mean, so you can imagine giving this to another character, and the player looking over at you, and they're just going to be like, if they've got elven accuracy, they're going to love you even more. But even without that, this is what you cast on the barbarian, or this is what you cast on anyone in the party that's making attack rolls.
Yeah, absolutely.
But hey, it's a 9th level spell slot.
Give it to the rogue. Permanent advantage, permanent sneak attack.
Yeah.
And if you've also doubled down and you've got a divination wizard in your party.
Yeah. And you're throwing bonus action inspiration out there as well. By the time you're casting 9th level spells, it's difficult to challenge a party anyway.
Yeah. And this is our quick rundown of some of our crits and misses from the spell list available to Bards in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
Absolutely.
If you've got any other choices you'd make, or you disagree with our choices, or actually, Damien, that spell doesn't work that way, and here's why, and this is why this one is better, pop it in the comments. Let's have a chat about it. There's a whole load of spells to choose from. Let us know what you would choose at various levels for your Bard.
Stick up for command, someone, please.
Yeah. I mean, let's have the command debate.
Yeah. I think Raised Dead might be slightly more. Yeah. Signing out.
And we'll leave it there.
See you again.